Greetings and salutations, everyone. How about a midnight bonus? I cannot sleep since the other afternoon whatever that thing was chased me out of that mountain area. So yeah, I might sleep an hour a night since then and I'm up, but I figured, hey, let's give you guys something to listen to. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss any of the informative and exciting uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And finally, last but definitely not least, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with tonight's bonus, shall we?
Have you ever heard a story and it's just been repeated so much that you don't look into it yourself? You just pass it along and think, hey, the story hasn't changed in years, so it must be true, right? Advertisers use repetition all of the time, as we do ourselves. One such story comes from Oklahoma in 1855. It's a tale of humans versus Sasquatch, an actual war. The story has everything anybody would want: action, adventure, real names, places, along with saving the day. The story has been modified throughout the years, but the basic facts and characters have remained the same. Hamas Tooby was an unusually large man, even for a Choctaw Indian. His father, Hanley Tooby, stood 2 inches over 8 feet in height and weighed 540 pounds. Hema and his 6 sons stood about a foot shorter than Palumi, or Father Tooby. They were large, exceedingly strong, fierce warriors. Hamas and his sons were point riders for a troop of Choctaw cavalry, known as the Light Horsemen. Many of the Choctaw Nation thought it humorous that such large men riding draft horses refer to themselves as Light Horsemen. Tooby's men experienced something which none would ever forget. The day's assignment was to flush out some bandits that had been preying upon the local farmers. A 30-man troop would be going into the area, which later in the state of Oklahoma became the McCurtain County Wilderness Area. These bandits had been not only taking large quantities of corn, squash, and beans, but had been taking very young children. This thievery had been taking place across the border in Arkansas as well, in the Indian Territory. The captain of the troop of the Choctaw Cavalry was a man named Joseph Lafleur. Captain Lafleur was a mixed blood, part French, part Choctaw. The men deeply respected him. Joseph Lafleur was impeccably honest and was brave to a fault. The men had been traveling on horseback nonstop since 3 o'clock in the morning. They began their assignment at the tribal capital in Tuscaloosa, and when they finally came to the Clover River, they let their horses eat, and the men decided to rest and eat as well. Non-stop riding for 8 hours, having to lead their horses across Little River, and the hot July sun were taking a toll on the men and their mounts. When some time had passed, Captain Josh gave the order, and the men remounted, and they began the last leg of their trip. At around 4:30 in the afternoon, the troop came to the edge of the area which the bandits were supposed to be inhabiting. Captain Joshua signaled with an uplifted hand that the troop should come to a halt. Standing in his stirrups, Captain Josh utilized the ship's eyepiece, a telescope, and promptly turned to his men and gave command for a full-armed charge. The distance between the suspected bandits and the troops was about 500 yards. The 2B men and Captain Josh were at the front of the charge, and as the 30 men and he neared the thick pine forest where the bandits were, two things took place at once. The stench of death assaulted both men and horses, and the horses became uncontrollable. The horses were rearing, pitching, and throwing riders. Captain Josh and the 7 2B men were the only ones in the troop whose mounts were disciplined enough that they continued to obey their riders and continued to charge in the midst of the bandits. When the 8 men met with the bandits, they were totally unprepared for what greeted them. The clearing behind the initial tree cover was actually large, earthen mound. Strewn about the mound were numerous corpses of human children in various stages of decay. Most of the bandits had fled, but 3 really large, hairy, ape-like creatures remained at the mound. Captain Joshua drew his saber and, with his pistol in hand, saber in the other, charged the huge monsters. The nearest monster killed Captain LaFleur's horse with one blow of its massive hand. The monster never flinched as Captain LaFleur poured bullets from his Patterson Colt revolver into the beast's chest. After emptying the revolver into the monster, Captain Joshua continued to press the attack with his saber. Many times did the saber meet the brute's flesh, and many times did blood spew from the gaping wounds on the beast's body. So quickly did this engagement take place that the 2B men had barely enough time to take aim at the 3 monsters before one of the beasts flanked the captain and literally tore Captain LaFleur's head off. There was not time for any sort of delay due to shock. The 2B men opened fire upon the 3-man beasts. 750 caliber Sharp's buffalo rifle impacted the 3 simian-appearing brutes at the same time. From years of routine and practice, all bullets smashed into the 3 monsters' heads. 6 rounds were fired into the heads of 2 monsters, which were the culprits that had killed their beloved captain. Only the youngest 2B, Robert, had the presence of mind to put a bullet into the head of the 3rd monster. A legend was born that day. Robert 2B, 18 years of age, all 6 foot 11 inches, 370 pounds of him, chased down a wounded man-beast and finished that beast off with only his hunting knife. By the time the other 6 2B men caught up with Robert and the monster, Robert had already decapitated the beast, holding the head aloft with both hands. Robert let out a primal scream which made even the 2B mounts panic. The light horsemen gathered their mounts and surveyed what was before them. Absolute carnage littered about the clearing. The partially consumed bodies of 19 children lay upon about that mound. The stench of decaying bodies was bad enough, but the overpowering odor of the man-beast's urine and feces was more than the strongest stomach could endure. After retching violently, the men of the troop buried the bodies of the children in 19 small graves, buried their beloved captain, and as a matter of respect, gave him a 21-gun salute. They built a large bonfire, placed the murderous man-beasts upon it, and lit it. As they rode back to Tuskahoma, each man struggled with emotions and thoughts he never before imagined. And that, my friends, is the Bigfoot Human War of Oklahoma, 1855. Today's second part of the upload. In February of 1829, a story broke in the United States newspapers of a bizarre attack by a hairy giant that left several hunters dead and missing in the Okefenokee Swamp. Thousands of alligators prove that prehistoric creatures can thrive in the Okefenokee, but could a hair-covered giant be among them? The Okefenokee, the Great Swamp, is a vast place of wetlands, lakes, prairies, bogs, and islands. It is mysterious and stunningly beautiful. Did a Bigfoot really attack a party of men in the Okefenokee in 1829, or was it a tall tale? The answers to those questions may never be known, but the story is one of many to add to the mystery of that swamp. The tale originated near the south end of Ware County, where the line that divides Georgia from Florida passes through the Okefenokee. In 1829, the first settlers were just pushing into the fringes of the swamp. Surrounded by the stunning beauty of the swamp, they quickly picked up an Indian legend that held a mysterious race of people lived on an island deep in the wilderness. So far as is known, this legend first appeared in print in 1806 in Jedediah Morris's book, Geography Made Easy. In his section on Georgia, Morris repeated a legend that a group of Indian hunters had gone into the swamp and become lost. When they were in desperate condition, a party of the most beautiful women they had ever seen came to their rescue. They, being lost in the swamps and bogs and on the point of perishing, were unexpectedly revived by the company of beautiful women, whom they called Daughters of the Sun, who kindly gave them such provisions as they had with them, consisting of fruit and corn cakes. The tale, as repeated by Morris, continued with the women warning the hunters to flee as fast as possible to their own country, because their husbands were fierce men and cruel to strangers. These men of the swamp were said by the Creek Indians to be a gigantic stature and both cruel and warlike. In the winter of 1828-1829 was extremely dry, and two men living on the edges of the swamp decided to explore as deep into it as they could. Accompanied by a boy, they went into the Okefenokee, and over the course of 2 weeks continued to penetrate deeper and deeper into it. As they explored the very heart of the swamp, they made a startling discovery of gigantic footprints. The length of the foot was 18, and the breadth 9 inches. The monster, from every appearance, must have moved forward in an easy or hesitating gait, his stride from heel to toe being a trifle over 6 feet. The men, as newspapers of the time noted, had seen enough, ending their expedition and retreating out of the swamp. They related to their friends and neighbors what they had seen. That is republished from the Connecticut Sentinel in February 9th, 1829, originally the Mildageville, Georgia Statesman, January 1829. The story excited and curious of a party of hunters who lived just across the Florida line. 9 in number, they went into the swamp to find the mysterious giant. They were guided by one of the members of the original party. Following for some days the direction of their guide, they came at length upon track first discovered, some vestiges of which were still remaining. Pursuing these traces several days longer, they came to a halt on a little embankment and determined to pitch their camp and refresh themselves for the day. The expedition was described in detail in newspaper reports published in February of 1829. Those accounts indicated that as the hunters were discharging their guns to reload them with fresh powder for the night, a wild animal charged their camp. The next minute he was full in their view, advancing upon them with a terrible look and ferocious. Their little band instinctively gathered close in a body and presented their rifles. The huge being, nothing daunted, bounded upon his victims, and in the same instant received the contents of 7 rifles. The fight, however, did not end there. He did not fall alone, nor until he had gulled his wrath with the death of 5 of them, which he effected by wrangling the head from their body, writhing and exhausted at the length he fell, with his hapless prey beneath his grasp. As the creature lay dying on the ground, writhing and sometimes roaring, the men who survived the attack gathered around it to make closer inspection. The creature was found to measure 13 feet from head to toe, and his breadth and volume of just proportions. Immediately fearful that the dying monster's cries may attract others of its kind, the hunters fled the swamp. The men who died in that battle with the creature were left lying where they had fallen. It is a remarkable story. Is it true? The honest answer is no one knows. A newspaper correspondent who reported it wrote that people living in Ware County on the margins of the Okefenokee Swamp clearly believe it. Either way, the story of the 1829 attack was one of the earliest written accounts of a creature we know today as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Sightings of some kind of large creature in the swamp and discoveries of large footprints continue to be reported in that area to this day. Today's final encounter is just a little bonus I wanted to throw in. So me and two of my friends decided to go to a tunnel, which is like the shortest walk, but it's because you have to park in the middle of nowhere and literally walk through a pretty dense woodland. We got out of the car and start to walk up the path to the tunnel, and my friend, we'll just call him Nate, has this huge and high-powered spotlight, which I was using because he was checking out my little tack light. Nate's spotlight can reach like half a mile. It's crazy, so I decided to flash it back towards my other friend RJ's car. I see these two eyes in the woods behind the car, like halfway up this tree. My friend's like, whoa, that's pretty high, so we decide to head back towards it and check it out. We don't see the eyes, so we assume it was just an animal or something and it ran off. My friend has my light and says, whoa, it's over there now. It came close to us. It was 100% humanoid head. We even saw the arms. So RJ at this point gets sketched as hell and goes, let's get back to the car. We are at this point like 100 yards from the car. We get to the break of the dense wood path, probably 75 yards from the car, and I see the eyes again with the spotlight, even closer to us. It keeps getting close, and it's way up this tree. 7-ish feet, I'd assume. At this point, we all have our knives out because we're scared shitless. RJ goes, we gotta get to our car, but it's right there on the other side of the road. We get to the metal rebar blockade type thing that blocks the path so no one can drive their cars through the tunnels. And we don't see the eyes. We stop and are scanning the wood line on the other side of the road. And I see to our left an eye peeking at us, and it darts back behind a tree and re-peeks. And I see 100% humanoid head and arm that darts back behind the tree. At this point, we book it to the car. We get into the car and Nate winds down the back window and starts scanning with his light. We see it like 20 yards from the car, and we see its head, its arms, and its feet. And again it re-hides behind the tree. RJ is in full panic because it keeps getting closer, so he floored it out of there. Nate vouches that it was a Bigfoot. RJ to this day says he has no idea what it was and does not want to talk about it. Honestly, I want to say it was a Bigfoot, but I'm so skeptical with that kind of stuff. I genuinely do not know what it was. It was 7 to 8 feet tall and kept getting closer to us. It was not an owl and was not a bear. And it was not a human, because human eyes do not refract light like this did, so it was not human. Nate refuses to even go back to the tunnel. He's that scared. Probably one of the most terrifying moments of my life. The thing is it wasn't even that scary, but we were all talking on the drive home about how we all felt like dread or horror, even as we pulled up to the trail before we even saw the eyes. We all agreed we are never had that strange of a feeling in our entire lives. Like an immediate, insurmountable dread right as we got out of the car. It also wasn't a good idea that we decided to go at like 2 in the morning.
Alright guys, like I said, I cannot sleep. I lie down, I might sleep for a half an hour to an hour, and then my brain just kicks in overdrive and I start thinking about what that was. And whatever. Why I ran. That's my biggest thing. Why didn't I just stand there and figure out what was going on? What kind of a researcher am I? Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed tonight's bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant in the woods. These things are real, 100%. God bless you all.